The ship fell from the sky like a dying star. It burned through Earth's atmosphere, leaving a trail of fire and smoke across the morning sky. People in Seoul stopped walking. They looked up at the strange light. Some took pictures with their phones. Others ran away in fear. The ship crashed into the Yellow Sea, just 30 kilometers from the coast. Within minutes, military helicopters filled the air. News reporters spoke fast into their cameras. The whole world watched and waited. Admiral Park stood on the deck of a naval ship, his eyes fixed on the water. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face full of deep lines. He had served in the Korean Navy for 40 years. He had seen many strange things, but he had never seen anything like this. The rescue teams pulled the ship from the water. It was not made of any metal they knew. It was smooth and silver like liquid glass that had become solid. There were no windows, no doors that anyone could find. The scientists were confused. Then the ship opened by itself. A creature stepped out. It was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and black, like pools of ink. It wore clothes made of light that shifted and changed color as it moved. The soldiers raised their weapons, but Admiral Park held up his hand. "Wait," he said, "let us see what it wants." The creature walked toward them slowly. It seemed weak. Its legs were shaking. When it spoke, its voice was soft and full of pain. "I am," it said, "ambassador of the Empire. I have traveled for many months to reach your world. Please, we need your help." Admiral Park stepped forward. He had learned long ago that fear was not useful. Understanding was better. "What kind of help do you need?" he asked. His dark eyes filled with something that looked like tears, though no water fell. "My people are dying," said. "There is an enemy we cannot defeat. It has destroyed 12 of our star systems. Billions of my kind are dead. We have heard stories about humans. Stories that say you are great warriors, that you never give up, that you have weapons of terrible power." Admiral Park listened carefully. He had heard such words before, but never from a being from another world. "Come with me," he said. "Tell us everything." They brought to a meeting room deep inside a military base. Leaders from many countries appeared on large screens around the room. The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Japan, the Chancellor of Germany, many others. They all watched the alien ambassador with careful eyes. Told them about the Empire. It was a civilization that had existed for 10,000 years. They were peaceful beings who valued art and knowledge. They had never fought a war in all their long history. Then the Hollow came. "The Hollow is not a fleet," explained. "It is not an army, it is a hunger, a living darkness that moves between the stars. It lands on a world and feeds on the people who live there, but it does not eat their bodies, it eats their minds, their feelings, their will to live." The room was silent. On the screens, leaders looked at each other with worried faces. "When the Hollow comes to a world," continued, "the people become empty. They stop eating. They stop talking. They simply sit and wait to die. The Hollow feeds on their despair until nothing is left. Then it moves to the next world." "And you want us to fight this thing?" asked the American president. "Yes," said, "we have tried everything. Our ships cannot hurt it. Our weapons pass through it like light through water, but humans are different. You have survived terrible things, wars, diseases, natural disasters, and still you grow stronger. We believe you have weapons we do not know about, weapons that can hurt the Hollow." Admiral Park looked at the alien for a long time. He thought about what was asking. He thought about the ships and soldiers that Earth could send. He thought about the cost of war. But mostly, he thought about what kind of enemy could eat hope itself. "How many of your people are still alive?" he asked. "Perhaps 500 million," answered. "Down from 12 billion. We are gathered on our last 3 worlds. The Hollow will reach us in 6 months. When it does, the Empire will end." The room erupted in discussion. Some leaders wanted to help. Others said it was not Earth's problem. Some demanded to know what Earth would get in return. Others were still not sure if they believed any of it. Admiral Park raised his hand. The room fell quiet. "We will help you," he said simply. 4 hands pressed together in what seemed like a gesture of thanks. "You will send your warships, your weapons of mass destruction." "No," said Admiral Park. His face showed confusion. "I do not understand. You said you would help." "We will send help," the Admiral said, "but not the kind you expect. You see, Ambassador, you came here looking for weapons. You think humans are dangerous because of our bombs and our guns, but those are not our greatest weapons." "Then what is?" asked. Admiral Park smiled. It was a warm smile, full of something the alien could not quite understand. "You will see," he said. "Give us 1 week to prepare. Then we will send a ship to your empire. What we send will be our most powerful weapon against an enemy like the Hollow." Looked uncertain. He had crossed half a galaxy to find warriors and weapons. The humans were offering neither, but he had no other choice. His people were dying. Hope was almost gone. "Very well," he said. "I trust you, Admiral Park. I hope that trust is not a mistake." 1 week later, stood beside Admiral Park at a space station high above Earth. Before them was a single transport ship. It was not a warship. It carried no missiles or cannons. It was just a simple vessel made to carry people and supplies. "This is what you are sending?" asked. His voice was heavy with disappointment. "Yes," said Admiral Park. "On that ship are 500 humans, doctors, engineers, teachers, counselors. They are volunteers who have agreed to help your people." "But we need soldiers. We need weapons." Admiral Park put his hand on Thin's shoulder. The alien flinched at the touch but did not pull away. "Ambassador," the Admiral said gently, "you told me that the Hollow feeds on despair, that it eats hope and leaves emptiness behind. Do you really think a bomb can fight such a thing? Do you think missiles can destroy despair?" Was silent. "The people on that ship carry something more powerful than any weapon we could build," Admiral Park continued. "They carry the ability to give hope to those who have lost it, to heal wounds that cannot be seen, to remind your people that life is worth fighting for." Looked at the ship. He still did not understand, but he climbed aboard anyway. As the ship flew toward the stars, sat alone in his cabin, he thought about his dying empire. He thought about the billions already lost. He thought about the 500 humans traveling with him. Doctors, teachers, counselors. Not a single soldier among them. He wondered if humanity had just sent his people to die faster. He wondered if hope was really a weapon at all. He would soon find out. The journey took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of traveling through the cold darkness between stars. 3 weeks of silence between and the humans on the ship. Spent most of his time in his cabin, staring at old pictures of his. He remembered the great cities that had once touched the clouds. He remembered the gardens that bloomed in 1,000 colors. He remembered the songs his people used to sing. Now those cities were empty. Those gardens were dead. No one sang anymore. On the 15th day of travel, a woman knocked on his door. She was short with black hair cut just below her ears. Her face was round and kind, with eyes that seemed to hold a gentle light. She smiled as if they were old friends. "May I come in?" she asked. Nodded slowly. No human had tried to speak with him since they left Earth. The woman sat down across from him. She moved slowly, giving him time to adjust to her presence. "My name is," she said. "I am what humans call a psychologist. I help people who are hurting inside their minds." "Why are you here?" asked. "In my cabin, I mean. No one else has come." Smiled softly. "Because you look like someone who needs to talk. You have been alone this whole trip. You barely eat. You do not sleep well. I can see the pain in your eyes, Ambassador." Turned away. "You cannot understand my pain. Your world is whole. Your people are alive. Mine are dying." "You are right," agreed. I cannot fully understand, but I can listen. Sometimes that is enough." Something broke inside then. Perhaps it was the kindness in her voice. Perhaps it was the weeks of loneliness. Perhaps it was the weight of carrying his people's fate on his thin shoulders. He began to talk. He told her about his wife who had been taken by the Hollow 2 years ago. She had been a poet. Her words had once made millions weep with joy. The last time he saw her, she was sitting in a chair, staring at nothing. She had stopped eating, stopped speaking. She simply faded away until there was nothing left. He told her about his son who had joined the fleet to fight the Hollow. The boy had been brave and strong. He had believed he could make a difference. His ship had flown straight into the darkness. It never came back. He told her about the billions of who had simply given up. They did not run from the Hollow. They did not fight. They just accepted death as if it was the only choice left. Listened to all of it. She did not interrupt. She did not try to fix anything. She simply sat with him in his pain. When he finished, she reached out and took one of his 4 hands in both of hers. "I am so sorry," she said. "No one should have to carry such weight alone." Felt something strange in his chest. It was warm and uncomfortable. He realized with surprise that he was crying. Real tears falling from his dark eyes for the first time in years. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do humans survive such pain?" Thought for a moment. We survive by not surviving alone. We hold each other up when we cannot stand. We share our pain so that no one person has to carry all of it. And we remind each other, again and again, that there is still something worth living for. "But what if there is nothing worth living for?" whispered. "What if hope itself has died?" Squeezed his hand. "Then we create new hope. We build it from small things, a warm meal, a kind word, a moment of laughter. Hope is not something we find, Ambassador. It is something we make." The ship arrived at the 3 days later. Had prepared himself for what he would see, but preparation was not enough. The planet was gray. The great city stood silent and empty. The streets were filled with who simply sat or lay on the ground, staring at nothing. They were not dead, but they were not alive either. They were hollow. The human transport landed at the capital city's main square. Military officers were waiting for them. Their faces were hard and angry. The lead officer was called. He was older than, with scars on his arms from battles long past. He had been a general once, leading fleets against pirates and raiders. Now he led the last defense against the Hollow. "This is what Earth sends us," demanded, looking at the humans who walked down the ship's ramp. "Teachers, doctors, children who have never seen war." "They are here to help," said weakly. Help laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We asked for weapons, we asked for warriors, and they send us this." He pointed at who was kneeling beside an elderly woman. The woman had not moved in hours. She just sat in the street like a broken doll, was speaking softly to her, holding her hand. "What is she doing?" asked. "Does she think kind words will stop the Hollow?" Stepped forward then. He was a tall young man with strong arms and a calm face. He was an engineer, one of the best on Earth. He had built bridges and power plants. He had rebuilt cities after earthquakes. "General," he said respectfully, "I understand your frustration, but please give us a chance to show you what we can do." Glared at him. "And what can you do, human? Can you build a weapon that will kill the Hollow?" "No," admitted. "But I can rebuild your water system so your people have clean water to drink. I can fix your power stations so they have light and heat. I can repair your homes so they have safe places to sleep." "We do not need comfortable homes," shouted. "We need to survive." "With respect," General said, "survival is not just about not dying. It is about having something to live for. Right now, your people have given up because they see no future. We are here to help them see one again." Was silent for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. "Do what you want," he called over his shoulder. "It will not matter. The Hollow will be here in 5 months. Nothing you do will stop it." For the next few weeks, the humans worked tirelessly. The doctors moved through the streets, treating the sick and the wounded. Many had stopped taking care of themselves. They had infections and injuries they had simply ignored. The doctors cleaned their wounds and gave them medicine. The teachers gathered the children. There were thousands of young who had stopped going to school. Their parents had given up, so they had given up too. The teachers created small classrooms in empty buildings. They taught the children songs and games. They helped them paint pictures and tell stories. The engineers went to work on the broken infrastructure, led teams that repaired the water treatment plants. They fixed the electrical systems. They cleaned the streets and repaired the buildings. Slowly, the city began to look like a place where people lived again. And went from person to person, simply talking. She listened to their stories. She heard their pain. She cried with them and laughed with them. She reminded them of who they had been before the hollow came. She asked them about their dreams, their memories, their loves. At first they did not respond. They sat in silence, staring at nothing, but did not give up. She came back every day. She brought food and water. She sat beside them for hours, even when they did not speak. Then one day something changed. An old man who had not spoken in months looked at and asked, "Why do you care? You are not one of us. Why do you stay?" Smiled at him. "Because you matter," she said. "Because your life has value. Because no one should be alone in the dark." The old man was quiet for a long time. Then slowly he began to cry. It was the first time he had felt anything in months. And in that moment, watching the old man's tears fall, finally began to understand what Admiral Park had meant. The humans had not brought weapons. They had brought something far more dangerous to an enemy like the Hollow. They had brought hope. 2 months had passed since the humans arrived on the 2 months of hard work, small victories, and slow change. Stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Below her, she could see people moving through the streets, not many but more than before. Some were even talking to each other. It was not much, but it was something. General appeared beside her. He had been watching the humans closely these past weeks. His anger had faded, replaced by something like confusion. He did not understand what the humans were doing, but he could not deny the results. "The Eastern District had its first community meal today," he said. 300 attended. They actually ate together. Some of them smiled. Nodded, "That is good news." "I do not understand it," admitted. "My soldiers have been trying to motivate people for years. We gave speeches about duty and survival. We threatened punishment for those who gave up. Nothing worked. But your people, they just talk. They just listen. They make soup and play games with children. How is that working when nothing else did?" Turned to face him. The old general's eyes were tired. She could see that he had been carrying a heavy burden for a long time. "May I tell you a story from Earth?" she asked. Nodded slowly. "Long ago there was a man who was shipwrecked on a tiny island. He was alone. He had no food, no water, no hope of rescue. Every day he thought about giving up. Every day he wanted to walk into the ocean and let the waves take him." Listened silently. But every morning before he could give up, the sun would rise. And every time he saw the sun rise, he thought, "Maybe today will be different. Maybe today a ship will come." So he survived another day, and another, and another. "Did a ship ever come?" asked. "Yes. After 3 years alone, a ship found him. Do you know what saved him, General? It was not strength. It was not weapons. It was not even intelligence. It was hope. The simple belief that tomorrow might be better than today." Was quiet for a long moment. "The Hollow destroys hope. That is its weapon." "Yes," agreed. "And that is why we cannot fight it with guns and ships. You cannot shoot despair. You cannot bomb emptiness. The only weapon that works against the Hollow is the opposite of what it creates." Hope whispered. "Hope," confirmed. Your people stopped fighting because they stopped believing that fighting mattered. They gave up because they could not see a future worth living for. Our job is not to fight the Hollow directly. Our job is to give your people back their reason to fight. Over the next few weeks, began training volunteers in what she called the human method. It was simple in concept but difficult in practice. The idea was to rebuild society from the ground up, starting with the most basic human connections. First, she taught them about community meals. On Earth, she explained, sharing food was one of the oldest and most powerful ways to build bonds between people. When you cook for someone, you show them that you care. When you eat together, you are saying, "We are not alone." The volunteers set up cooking stations in every district. They made simple foods from whatever supplies they could find. The smell of cooking attracted people who had not eaten in days. Some came for the food, but many stayed for the company. Second, she taught them about storytelling. Before the Hollow came, there had been a people of great stories and songs, but in their despair, they had forgotten how to tell them. Stories remind us who we are, explained. They connect us to our past and help us imagine our future. When we stop telling stories, we stop believing in possibilities. She encouraged them to share their memories. Old people told young people about the days before the Hollow. Parents told children about the heroes and legends of their culture. Slowly, the stories began to flow again, and with the stories came laughter, and with laughter came life. Third, she taught them about physical touch. Many had not touched another person in months. They sat alone, isolated in their despair. But touch was important. It reminded the body that it was alive, that it was connected to others. The volunteers began a simple practice. Every day they would walk through the streets and offer to hold hands with anyone who wanted it. Just that simple gesture, just a few minutes of contact. It was strange at first, but soon people began reaching out on their own. Continued his work on the infrastructure. His teams had restored power to 60% of the capital city. Clean water flowed through the pipes again. Lights turned on in buildings that had been dark for years. One day he had an idea. "We should build a park," he said in the central district. "There is an empty area where a government building used to stand. We could clear it and plant trees and flowers. Make it a place where people can come together." A park smiled. "That is a wonderful idea." Gathered a team of volunteers. They were hesitant at first. Building something new felt strange when everything was falling apart, but worked alongside them, showing them how to shape the land and plant the seeds. "On Earth," he told them as they worked, "we have a saying. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. It means that no matter how bad things seem, it is never too late to start building something good." The park took shape over the following weeks. Trees were planted, benches were built, pathways were laid with stones. When it was finished, it was not large, but it was beautiful. The first night after the park opened, something amazing happened. A group came with instruments. They were old instruments, dusty and unused, but they cleaned them and tuned them, and then they began to play. It was the first music the city had heard in 3 years. People came from all over to listen. They sat on the benches and on the grass. They listened to the old songs that their parents and grandparents had sung. Some cried, some laughed, some did both at the same time. General watched from a distance. His eyes were wet. "How?" he asked who stood beside him. "How did they do this? How did they remember how to live?" "They never forgot," said gently. "They just needed someone to remind them." Ambassador walked through the crowd. He saw faces he recognized. People who had been sitting in the streets like empty shells just weeks ago. Now they were standing, talking, listening to music, living. He found the old man who had asked why she cared. The man was sitting on a bench, holding hands with his wife. They were both smiling. "You look different," said to him. The old man nodded. "I feel different. For a long time I thought there was no point in living. The hollow had taken everything, my home, my friends, my hope. But then the humans came, and they showed me something I had forgotten. What was that? That I was not alone, the old man said. That even in the darkest night, there are others who will sit beside you and wait for the dawn. That is what hope is, ambassador. It is not believing that things will get better. It is knowing that you do not have to face the darkness by yourself. Felt tears in his eyes again. He had cried more in these past months than in his entire life. But these were not tears of despair. They were something else. He looked around at his people, at the music and the food and the smiles, at the humans who had given them back their will to live. The hollow was still coming. In 3 months it would reach this world. It would bring its darkness and its hunger. But for the first time in years, believed they might actually survive it. Not because they had weapons, but because they had something the hollow could not destroy. They had each other. And as the music played on into the night, realized that this was what Admiral Park had meant all along. This was humanity's deadliest weapon. Not a bomb, not a fleet. Just the simple, stubborn refusal to let hope die. The hollow came on a day when the sky was clear and blue. It did not arrive like an enemy fleet with ships and weapons. It came as a shadow, a darkness that spread across the horizon like ink bleeding through water. It moved slowly, covering the sun and turning day into night. The sensors had warned them 3 days earlier. The entire planet had prepared as best they could, but no one really knew what to expect. No one who had faced the hollow directly had ever survived to describe it. Stood in the Central Park with hundreds of around her. They looked up at the spreading darkness with fear in their eyes. Some held hands, some prayed, some simply stood in silence waiting. "Do not be afraid," said her voice calm and steady. "Remember what we have learned. Remember who you are. Remember that you are not alone." The darkness reached the city. It did not destroy buildings or kill with weapons. It simply settled over everything like a heavy blanket, and then the voices began. They were not real voices. They were feelings, thoughts that pushed their way into every mind. The hollow spoke without words. It showed people their worst fears, their deepest regrets, their darkest memories. A young woman named Sira fell to her knees. "I see my sister," she cried. "She is dying. I could not save her. I could not save her." An old man named grabbed his head. "What is the point? We are all going to die. We should just give up now. Give up, give up." All around the park were falling. The hollow was feeding on their despair. It was pulling out every sad memory, every failure, every loss. It was showing them a universe without hope, without meaning, without light. But then something strange happened. Walked through the crowd. She found Sira on the ground and knelt beside her. "Sira," she said firmly, "look at me, look at me." Sira opened her eyes. They were filled with tears and terror. "Your sister died," said. "Yes, that is true, and it hurts. It will always hurt. But she loved you, Sira. She would not want you to give up. She would want you to live, to fight, to remember her with love, not with despair." "But the darkness," Sira began. "The darkness shows you pain because pain is all it knows," interrupted. "It cannot show you love. It cannot show you hope. It cannot show you all the good things in your life. Only you can do that. Now stand up. Stand up and choose to remember the good." Sira trembled. The hollow pushed against her mind, filling it with images of death and loss. But she thought of her sister's laugh, her sister's smile, the songs they used to sing together. And slowly she stood. All over the city, the humans were doing the same thing. They moved through the crowds, finding who had fallen. They spoke to them, held their hands, reminded them of why they wanted to live. Found General standing alone on a rooftop. The old soldier was staring at the darkness with empty eyes. "It is showing me my failures," said, his voice hollow. "All the battles I lost, all the people I could not save. I should have died with them." Stood beside him. "You are still here, General. That means something." It means I was a coward. I ran while others died. No, said firmly. It means you survived to lead your people through the darkest time in their history. Every person you have saved, every life you have protected, that matters. The Hollow wants you to forget that. Do not let it win. Looked at the young human. The darkness swirled around them, cold and hungry, but its eyes saw no fear, only determination. How do you resist it? Asked. How are you not falling like the others? Smiled slightly. Because I have learned that darkness is not the whole story. Yes, there is pain in life. Yes, there is loss, but there is also love, there is kindness, there is beauty. The Hollow can only show you half the truth. The other half is yours to hold. Something shifted in his chest. The darkness still pressed against his mind, but it felt weaker somehow. The memories of failure were still there, but now other memories rose up beside them. The young soldiers he had trained, the families he had protected, the moments of joy scattered among the sorrow. He straightened his back. You are right, human, I have more to do. I will not fall here. Down in the streets, Ambassador was struggling. The Hollow knew him. It knew his wife. It knew his son. It showed him their deaths over and over again. It whispered in his mind that he had failed them, that he had failed his entire empire, that everything he had done was pointless. Fell to his knees in the middle of the park. The darkness wrapped around him like chains. He could not move. He could not think. He could only see the faces of everyone he had lost. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up and saw standing over him. The darkness swirled around her, but she did not seem to notice it. She was looking at him with those kind eyes, the same eyes that had first seen his pain on the ship from Earth. She said gently, "Tell me about your wife." "She is dead," whispered. The Hollow took her. "I know, but before that, tell me about who she was." Did not understand why she was asking, but her voice was so calm, so certain, that he found himself answering. "She was a poet," he said. "Her words were like music. When she spoke, people would cry and laugh at the same time. She believed in the beauty of the universe. She said that even in darkness there were always stars." "She sounds wonderful," said. "What else?" "She loved gardens. She grew flowers on our balcony. Every morning she would water them and talk to them like they were her children." Felt a tear roll down his cheek. "She was the kindest person I ever knew." "And your son?" "He was brave, too brave perhaps. He wanted to save everyone. He could not accept that some things were beyond his power." His voice broke. "He was so young. He had so much life left to live." "They sound like beautiful people," said. "People worth remembering. Not with pain, with love. The Hollow wants to turn your love into despair. But love is stronger than despair. Hold on to the love. Hold on to the memory of who they really were." Closed his eyes. The Hollow pushed harder, showing him death and emptiness. But now another image rose up. His wife laughing in her garden. His son running through the halls as a child. Moments of pure joy that the darkness could not erase. He opened his eyes. The chains of shadow around him seemed thinner somehow, weaker. "I remember," he said. "I remember them as they lived, not as they died." All across the city the same thing was happening. They were remembering. They were holding on to the good. They were refusing to let the darkness take everything. And the Hollow was starving. For the first time in its existence, it had encountered prey that would not surrender. The darkness had always fed on despair, on hopelessness, on the complete surrender of will. But these people were not surrendering. They were standing up. They were holding hands. They were singing songs and telling stories and refusing to give in. The darkness writhed. It pushed harder, trying to break through the wall of hope that the humans had helped build. But the wall held. General led his soldiers through the streets, not to fight the Hollow, but to help the fallen. They picked up those who had collapsed. They carried them to places where others could hold them and remind them why they wanted to live. "Keep fighting," shouted. "Not with weapons, with your hearts. Remember who you are. Remember why we live." The humans moved through the crowds like lights in the darkness. Wherever they went, stood up again. Wherever they spoke, the shadow grew weaker. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the hollow had retreated. Not much, just a little. The darkness still covered most of the sky, but there was a small patch of blue that had not been there before. Looked up at that patch of blue and smiled. "It is working," she said quietly. "Hope is working." The war against the hollow had truly begun, and for the first time they were winning. 3 weeks had passed since the hollow first arrived. 3 weeks of constant struggle. 3 weeks of holding onto hope against the endless darkness. The shadows still covered the sky, but it was thinner now. Patches of sunlight broke through every day. The hollow was not dead, but it was weakening. It had never faced an enemy like this before. It did not know how to fight something it could not break. Sat in the Central Park, surrounded by who had come to learn the human method. There were thousands of them now. Teachers, healers, counselors. They had learned how to fight the hollow with kindness instead of weapons. "Remember," said to them, "the battle is not won once and finished. Hope is something we must choose every single day. When you wake up tomorrow, the darkness will try again. It will show you pain. It will show you fear. And you must choose again and again to see the light." A young named raised his hand. "But what if someday we fail? What if the hope runs out?" Smiled at him. "Hope does not run out. It is not a resource that can be used up. It is a choice. As long as you are alive, you can choose hope, even when everything seems lost, even when the darkness feels endless. Hope is always available to those who reach for it." That night something changed. The hollow had been silent for days, retreating and regrouping, but now it surged forward with all its remaining strength. The darkness grew thick and heavy, pressing down on the city like a giant hand. This was its final attack, its last desperate attempt to break the before it starved completely. The voices came stronger than ever before. They screamed into every mind, showing nightmares and horrors beyond imagination. People fell by the hundreds. The streets filled with bodies that were not dead but had simply given up. General felt the pressure like a knife in his brain. He fell to one knee, gasping. The hollow showed him every soldier under his command who had died. It showed him their faces, their screams, their accusations. "You failed them," the darkness whispered. "You let them die. You are worthless. Give up, give up, give up." But then he heard something else. It was singing. Somewhere in the city, someone was singing an old song. It was a song about farmers who planted seeds in barren soil. A song about waiting through long winters for spring to come. A song about believing in tomorrow even when today was cold and dark. Recognized the voice. It was. The young human engineer was standing on a platform in the central square, singing at the top of his lungs. He did not have a beautiful voice. He did not know all the words, but he was singing anyway, filling the darkness with sound. Other voices joined him, who had learned the song picked it up, then more, and more, until thousands of voices were singing together, pushing back against the silence of the hollow. Found himself singing too. The words came back to him from childhood, from a time before the hollow, when his mother would sing him to sleep. He sang through his tears, through his pain, through his fear. And the darkness began to shake. Ambassador felt it before he saw it. Something was wrong with the hollow. It was trembling, vibrating like a plucked string. The shadow that covered the sky was rippling, losing its form. He ran through the streets toward the central square. Everywhere he looked were standing. They were holding hands, singing, crying, laughing. They were alive in a way they had not been for years. In the square he found standing at the center of a massive crowd. She was not singing. She was simply watching, tears streaming down her face. "What is happening?" asked her. "It is dying," said quietly. "The hollow is dying." Above them the shadow began to break apart. Pieces of darkness fell away like dead leaves from a tree. Sunlight poured through the gaps, golden and warm. They lifted their faces to the light, feeling its warmth for the first time in years. The hollow screamed. It was not a sound. It was a feeling that passed through every mind on the planet, pure rage and confusion, pure hatred for these creatures who would not break. "Why?" the hollow demanded, its voice filling the sky. "Why do you fight? Why do you resist? There is only darkness, there is only emptiness, there is only the end." Stepped forward and spoke, her voice somehow carrying to every corner of the city. "You are wrong," she said. "You have always been wrong. You look at the universe and see only darkness, but we see stars. You see endings, but we see beginnings. You feed on despair, but we create hope. That is the difference between us." "Hope is a lie," the hollow hissed. "A story you tell yourselves to delay the inevitable." "Maybe," agreed. "Maybe hope is just a story, but stories have power. They shape who we are and what we become. And our story says that even in the darkest night, dawn will come. Our story says that love is stronger than fear. Our story says that we are not alone." She gestured to the crowds around her. Thousands of standing together, holding hands, facing the darkness. "Look at them," she said. "Look at what they have become. You tried to destroy them, but you only made them stronger. You tried to take their hope, but they found it again. You cannot defeat a people who refuse to give up." The hollow was silent. And then slowly it began to fade. The darkness did not explode or vanish in a flash of light. It simply grew thinner and thinner, like morning mist burned away by the sun. The shadow pulled back from the city, retreating toward the horizon. As it went, it spoke one last time. "You have won this battle, humans, but I will return. Wherever there is despair, I will be there. Wherever hope dies, I will feed." Nodded, "We know, and we will be there too. Wherever despair grows, we will plant hope. Wherever darkness spreads, we will bring light. This is what humans do. This is who we are." The hollow did not answer. It simply faded away, disappearing into the space between stars. The sun shone down on them for the first time in years. People who had forgotten the warmth of light stood in the streets, crying with joy. Children who had never seen a clear sky looked up in wonder. General found sitting on the steps of a ruined building. The young engineer was exhausted, his voice completely gone from all the singing. "You saved us," said. "Your people saved us." Shook his head and smiled. "No, you saved yourselves. We just reminded you that you could." Walked through the celebrating crowds. He found the old man he had met months ago, the one who had first asked why she cared. The old man was dancing with his wife, both of them laughing like children. "Ambassador," the old man called out, "come dance with us." Laughed. It felt strange in his throat, unfamiliar after so many years, but it also felt right. He thought about his wife and his son. The pain was still there. It would always be there. But now there was something else too. Gratitude for the time he had with them. Hope for the future they had died to protect. That night they held the largest celebration in their history. Fires burned in every square. Music filled every street. Food was shared and stories were told. The humans were at the center of it all, embraced as heroes by a grateful people. Sat alone on a hill overlooking the city. She was tired, more tired than she had ever been. But she was also happy. She had done what she came to do. Found her there and sat beside her. "I need to tell you something," he said. Looked at him with those kind eyes. "When I came to Earth, I was looking for weapons. I thought that was what would save us, bombs and ships and soldiers." He paused, looking out at the celebration below. "I was wrong. The deadliest weapon humans have is not something you can hold in your hand. It is something you carry in your hearts." "What is that?" asked. Smiled. "The refusal to give up. The belief that tomorrow can be better than today. The courage to hope when hope seems impossible." He turned to face her. "You did not give us weapons. You gave us something far more powerful. You gave us back ourselves." Reached out and took his hand in hers. "That is what humans do," she said simply. "We find each other in the darkness, and we help each other find the light." Below them, they sang songs that had been silent for years. Above them, the stars shone bright and clear. And somewhere in the endless space between worlds, a message was spreading. The hollow could be defeated. Hope was a weapon, and humanity had given it to the galaxy.